I think this constant drainage in the back of my throat kind of causes a little odor, and so sometimes I joke around that Michelle won't kiss me.
Well, we know that's not true.
I really miss you.
I think probably y'all have gotten us kissing more than anything on video. He does have a problem with his breath, but I think it's because of all of the drainage. Oh, geez.
Michelle.
What?
Hey, I think I'm allergic to food because every time I eat it, my stomach starts swelling up.
That's the problem. We figured it.
Hello everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. It's Thursday, October 28th. Welcome back to my channel. We have a story for you today, and it's about the Duggar family, and it's all about this looming trial that's up to start on November 30th. As the trial approaches, there are a lot of people connected to the Duggars that are becoming more and more brave and coming to me and sharing their stories about what their experience has been, either around the Duggars, at church with the Duggars, or being friends with the Duggars. And what I'm learning is the reality that we saw on social media was very different than that of what was happening at home. There has been a lot of secrecy around the Duggars for years. And what I'm learning more than anything as I've dove headfirst into this world is that the Institute in Basic Life Principles and fundamentalist Baptists around the Duggars are all in a world where what you and I would believe and think of as normal is completely the polar opposite to them. Their belief system, the way that they think and feel, every aspect of their lives is so astronomically different than the average American that what we would find to be appalling, the behavior that we would find to be horrific, is just normal, run-of-the-day mill. Every family deals with it. This is how life is. When Jim Bob Duggar was on Megyn Kelly and he said that he had learned that many families dealt with the same problems that he dealt with related to Josh, I'm learning that he wasn't lying.
As we've talked to other families who've had, other things happen, a lot of their stories were even worse.
The problem with Josh seems to be a prevalent issue, and it's not a Josh issue, it seems to be a cultural issue. But the Duggars were able to gain fame and notoriety, which has placed them in a very unique position in this world where money talks, power increases with money, and groupies follow. With the Duggars, there's a lot of people around them that have flocked to them over the years because of their fame and because they believe that the Duggars have espoused the perfect Christian family. Behind that veil of secrecy and that veil that the Duggars put on TV, it's very, very different. Even though the Duggars were claiming publicly that nothing was going on with this investigation, even going as far as when news broke that a raid had happened, they claimed that, to the best of their knowledge, no family members of theirs were actually under an investigation, and they also stated that the news was fake. In fact, in a statement, they said this on November 19th of 2019. We were shocked to see a news report today state that our home was raided by federal law enforcement agencies. This is not true, to the best of our knowledge. It's also not true that any member of our family is the target of any investigation of any kind. Living a life in the public eye has taught us that it's best not to reply to every rumor and piece of fake news that is circulated online. It would be a full-time job if we attempted to do so. However, because of tonight's media coverage, we thought it was important to address this rumor with you. Thank you for the love and support that we can always count on in you, our fans and friends. So when he put out that statement, it seemed to quash some of the concern around the Duggars, specifically friends who believed Jim Bob when he said that no member of their family was under investigation and nothing had happened. But some people around the Duggars felt like things were changing, and Josh Duggar was also starting to confess to people that things were going on, even though Jim Bob was publicly denying it or providing as little information as possible to anyone around him. We noticed that the Duggars began to become more secretive on their social media. We also noticed that they seemed to start playing this game of damage control. Jill Duggar became more brave in her voice, sharing her experience of being on the show and the fact that she had to hire an attorney to get paid. She went public saying that she was not paid for her time on the show, and really outlined that she had no relationship with her family, and going as far as saying that she had not been to their home in years and that the house had a lot of triggers. With more secrets being revealed by Jill, there was some questions that perhaps this was a much bigger issue than we had initially thought. So while Jill was publicly saying things are not good, Derek is making public comments on his Instagram, the Duggars are putting out videos through Jessa praising Jim Bob and Michelle as the best mom and dad, and they're posting on their Instagram as though everything is fine. Anna, for her part, was doing a really good job of actually making people believe that her husband was redeemed and that Josh began to be featured more and more prominently on her Instagram. As Anna started embracing this role as the martyred woman who helped her troubled husband become more and more reformed, Josh was harboring a very dark secret, and even one that he didn't want to confess even to his closest friends. In fact, in a few months before his arrest, a source told me that Josh Duggar actually confided in them that the feds were after him. Josh also revealed that this was some sort of conspiracy by the federal government and seemed to downplay why the federal government was looking at him, but did acknowledge that this investigation was ongoing and also acknowledged that he was the target of the investigation, something that Jim Bob Duggar was not forthcoming about when anyone would ask him questions, according to multiple sources that I've talked to. Josh's confession to the friend prompted a lot of people to start to realize that this might be something more than we realized. The individuals I've spoke to said they didn't really need to ask Josh any more questions because they knew who Josh Duggar was. Even though Josh had claimed to be reformed, most people around him were still keeping a watchful eye and not fully embracing the image that was being portrayed on TV. Many kept their guard up and knew that at any time things could happen to make the situation worse, or that Josh Duggar wasn't the reformed success story that his parents wanted us to believe. So when he acknowledges that the feds are after him, he downplays it as sort of this conspiracy, like the government is out to get him, which is a similar case of what Jim Bob was also beginning to tell anyone close to him if they started asking questions. In fact, Jim Bob was said to have told multiple sources that, oh, they might have stopped by, HSI may have been here, there might be an investigation, but it's not a big deal. The whole narrative being spun by Jim Bob and Josh to anyone that would listen was that what was happening was a conspiracy by the government to frame Josh Duggar for crimes that he did not commit. Privately, people who had a lot of thoughts about Josh started to suspect that Josh was actually involved in stuff like CP. In fact, many believed it was CP or perhaps even worse. Knowing Josh's history and his confessions to what he had done to his sisters, as well as what he had done to an unnamed fifth individual, a lot of people started to wonder, what was Josh doing? His car dealership, which was not necessarily the most successful, was floundering, and at a point in time, Josh Duggar decided to sell his house. With not a lot of income coming in, he was able to get his house sold to a friend of the family, and then he subsequently moved into a converted guest house on his parents' property. During that time, there was discussion that he might build a new home, and then when he attempted to get a piece of property that was across the street from the Duggars, that apparently did not go off well. He allegedly wanted a piece of property across the street, which was owned by Jana Duggar, and when apparently Jim Bob tried to give that property to Josh, Jana was said to, according to my source, protest that Jim Bob would not allow Josh to have that property, that she would not give that property to Josh, and that she owned that property. With Jana protesting and not allowing Josh to purchase the property right across the street from her parents, Josh was then given a larger home on the hill, which is the home that he recently sold, which had been partially gutted, needed a lot of work, and if he was going to live there, would need a lot of construction to get ready. Sources tell me that they believe that Josh likely ran out of money once he got the home from Jim Bob, and that's why he tried to put the home on the market, because he wouldn't have the cash flow to actually finish the house. Knowing that he couldn't finish the house, then it became a scramble of trying to sell the house in order to have more money. While this was all going on, Josh maintained and was still under investigation, and for some who are around the Duggars, they believe that having Josh on the property helped Jim Bob keep a watchful eye on his troubled son. So Jim Bob and Josh were downplaying this, according to multiple people I talked to. With Josh telling friends that the feds were after him, with many believing that they believed this was going to end up being something connected to CP, and others starting to wonder whether or not that car lot was a front. Some families around the Duggars started to distance themselves. Jim Bob got into a heated argument with Paul Caldwell and effectively blew up the church. A huge feud was started between multiple people around the Duggars. Jim Bob and Michelle took the friends that they had and went to a new church, whereas some of the people around the Duggars that had been loyal to them for a very long time were left sort of in the dust, out for the wolves, and left to pick up the pieces. Interesting reality I'm starting to notice with the individuals that I speak to around the Duggars is that the Duggars are a very charitable family, which will help out friends and family, but they also seem to have a pattern when things are exposed about Josh. They do their best to protect their image, move on, destruct, continue. Multiple churches have been destroyed along the way, but the fact that Jim Bob and Josh seems so intertwined and interlinked into this idea of it didn't happen and this is all a conspiracy seems to suggest to me that there is some sort of codependent relationship between the two of them, where Josh depends on his father to clean up his image and Jim Bob depends on his son to keep the secrets, or something like that. So the two of them in some sort of way kind of conspire to craft concoct these tales. It's either that or Josh is flat out just lying to his parents and making them believe that he has been set up. Jim Bob has used this government is out to get us strategy in the past. In fact, in 2015, when the government actually released the investigation into Josh from 2006, he stated that the individuals at the police station had a thing for his family and were out to get them.
Josh had talked to her one day at a meeting, and he said hi to her and stuck out his hand, and she turned and wouldn't talk to him. She was getting ready to retire, and just even a few weeks ago, she said, I'm getting ready to retire, and there's a few things I want to do before I retire.
Jim Bob seems to believe that it's everyone else's fault for the things that have happened in his family, and instead of actually accepting the blame or taking a reflection of what's going on, it's easier for him to deflect and blame and move on. And the people around him, the people that are the groupies, the ones that just want to be around the famous family, will go around with it. In fact, some people tell me they have a lot of yes men and women surrounding them who will believe anything that they say. And so because of that, it's easy for them to pull the wool over things. Knowing that Josh clearly was bothered enough to tell someone that the feds were after him tells me that even though Josh was confident and was trying to sell a story, it suggests to me that he was really stressed out in those months before, and he knew that there was something happening, meaning everything that was being posted by the Duggars in the months leading up to his arrest was all just a big fat lie. They were pretending like nothing was happening, nothing was going on. They were acting like they were one big happy family, like everything was normal. And meanwhile, there was these humongous charges looming over his head, a massive investigation that at least Jim Bob and Josh were very aware of, and a lot of people left in the wake that were lied to, misled, or completely disregarded in regards to these charges. Most people I've spoken to believe that even if Josh is convicted, Jim Bob will find a way to spin the narrative. He'll either hold tight to a conspiracy, claiming that, again, that this was a setup by the government to take Josh down, or he'll find a way to distance himself from the situation to try to clear his name. The problem in this world is that because behavior like this is so normalized, a lot of people in this world aren't even shocked by it. Another thing I've noticed too is that because so many people in this world don't trust the government, it's a very easy place for Jim Bob to plant conspiracies, and his willing groupies will eat it up because they've also believed that the government is not being honest with them, that doesn't care about them. But the weird thing is that they all want to be in the government and they want their own government. It's a very odd dichotomy where they don't trust the government, but then they want to be in the government. So Jim Bob is telling people, no, nothing's going on, and Josh is saying the feds are after me. And The biggest piece of information that I took out of all of this is that Jana allegedly stood up for herself and held on to a piece of property that apparently Josh wanted to take from her and wanted their dad to give to him. And apparently Jana put her foot down and said no. Does this mean that Jana's starting to wake up? Does this mean that Jana will move on? I don't think so. Although Jana does, as I'm told, have some of her own independence. In fact, she was one of the older Duggars that did not want to be a part of the Caldwell's church. In fact, I was told that Jana was one that was not thrilled about the dress code, did not like all the rules at Paul Caldwell's church, and really struggled with the legalism aspect, which is probably why now today we're starting to see a Jana that's a little bit more open, wearing jeans and being a little bit more herself. She and Laura are said to have moved away from that church altogether, and they're just sort of doing their own thing. So Jana is taking some steps towards independence, although still very much under Jim Bob's thumb. All right, you guys, so what are your thoughts about this? Are you surprised that Josh said the feds are after me? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.